Okay, in this recording, I will introduce Kantian moral deliberation by comparing it with consequentialist or utilitarian moral deliberation para makita nyo lang yung contrast between the theory that was explained and applied in the midterm and the theory that is most likely going to be explained and applied in the final paper. So, ginagamit natin itong papel ni Honora O'Neill, pinamagatang Kantian approaches to some famine problems. So, let us begin with this idea, with this point where O'Neill compares Kantian moral deliberation with consequentialist moral deliberation. So, her point is, Kantian moral deliberation is less demanding. Parang sinasabi dito na yung demandingness objection, which if you remember is one of the main objections to utilitarianism, the idea that this theory asks people to do too much is not something that can be made against Kantian deontology. Why is that? Basahin natin yung isinulat ni O'Neill, basahin natin itong CP dito at ipapaliwanag ko pagkatapos. So sabi niya, it, meaning Kantian moral deliberation, yun ang antecedent ng pronoun na ito. Ang it is a stand-in for Kantian moral deliberation. Kantian moral deliberation does not propose a process of moral reasoning that can, in principle, rank all possible actions or all possible institutional arrangements from the happiness-maximizing right action. It aims rather to offer a pattern of reasoning by which we can identify whether a proposed action or institutional arrangement would be just or unjust, beneficent, or lacking in beneficence. So ano ibig sabihin nito? Balikan natin yung rule utilitarian moral deliberation. Rule utilitarian moral deliberation is a specific version of consequentialist moral deliberation. So paano ba pinag-iisipan itong mga rule utilitarian kung anong mga rule ang kanilang tatangkilikin? Yung kanilang susundin at ipapatupad sa lipunan, susundin bilang mga individual. Paano nila yun iniisip? Una, meron silang enumerate and rank. Yun yung first step eh. Ano ba yung options natin dito? Tapos, pagkatapos nating ilista lahat ng mga option natin, candidate rule number 1, candidate rule number 2, candidate rule number 3, etc. Ilista mo lahat. Tapos, gumawa ka ng projection based on available evidence, the best available evidence, and using your reason to predict what kind of result we will have if we adopt candidate 1, candidate 2, candidate 3. Ganon. Tapos, pipiliin mo kung alin yung candidate rule na may pinakamagandang resulta. In terms of promotion of the greatest happiness of the greatest number. Nakita natin yan with the rule on charitable giving or helping. So, the candidate rule that a lot of people unreflectively follow is that charitable giving is optional. So pagka nag-contribute ka, pagka tumulong ka, pagka nag-donate ka sa mga feeding program, halimbawa, mabuti yun. Pwede ka natin purihin o hangaan. Pero pag hindi mo ginawa, pag hindi ka nag-donate kahit may kaunting extra kang kayang i-donate, wala kang ginawang mali. Kasi parang, sa'yo naman yun eh. Parang ganon yung reasoning. Or the other possible rule, the one proposed by Peter Singer, is to make charitable giving obligatory, right? So the principle is if someone is experiencing great need and it would not require me to sacrifice something morally significant, it's an obligation to help. So ganun yung shallow pond example. Ano ba yung isasakripisyo ko kung merong batang nalulunod sa harap ko? Pwede naman sabihin ko, ayoko tumulong sa batang nalulunod. Kahit mamamatay siya kasi madudumihan yung pantalong ko. O kaya mahahassle ako. Kaya malilate ako sa klase ng 5 minutes. Lahat yun, dumi sa pantalon, mahassle, malate sa klase ng 5 minutes. Lahat yun hindi morally significant. Kumpara sa mamamatay yung bata pagka hindi ko sinagip kasi malulunod siya. Right? So, kung ang paghatol natin dun sa kasong yun tungkulin na tulungan yung bata. Sabi ni Singer, tungkulin din na mag-donate sa mga feeding program. Kasi ganun din yun. Ang pagkakaiba lang, dun sa shallow pond example, nasa harap yung batang nalulunod. Dun sa feeding program, wala sa harap mo yung batang hindi kumakain ng tama at hindi magkakaroon ng proper brain development. So, bawal tayo mag-discriminate based on distance because it does not count as a morally significant thing, yung physical distance. Okay. So, ganun yung takbo. Ganun yung logic ng rule utilitarian reasoning. So, enumerate and rank all possible rules, all possible institutional arrangements, and go for the best option. Sa Kantian moral deliberation, walang ganun. Wala silang interest sa maximization. So, hindi niya sinasabi, gawin natin yung pinaka-best option. Sa consequentialist kasi, sa rule utilitarian, good enough is not acceptable. You always have to go for the best. Kaya nga maximizing Ngayon, ang Kantian deontology walang interest sa maximization. Ang tinitignan nila kung merong kang nilalabag na prinsipyo. So it's a form of deontology. You know that when consequentialists, including rule utilitarians, when they assess an action, they look at what happens after the action is committed or after the rule is followed. So what happens after? Is the result good? Is it aligned with the promotion of the greatest happiness of the greatest number? Or is it not? Right? That's what they look at. Now, Kantians do not look at what happens after the action is committed. They look at what happens before. They look at the reasoning behind the action. They look at the motivation behind the action. So for Kantians, two actions with the same result, but different motivations behind them will have a different moral status. So ano ibig sabihin nun? Ano itsura nun? Magbigay tayo ng halimbawa na tungkol sa pagtulong din. Parang kahawig din ng charitable giving. Pero sa halimbawang ibibigay ko ngayon, hindi tungkol sa pag-donate sa feeding program. Gawin nating mas direkta. Okay. Pag-usapan natin yung karanasan na madalas mangyari sa marami sa atin dito sa Pilipinas. Lalo ngayon maraming nagugutom. Halimbawa, lalakad ka sa bangketa kung saan man yon. Tapos may sumalubong sa'yo na bata. Tapos yung bata nangingi ng pagkain. Sabi niya, nagugutom siya, hindi pa siya kumakain. So nakikita mo talagang payat siya, mukhang nahirapan siya, malungkot siya, mukhang kailangan niyang ng pagkain. Okay. Tapos may pagkain ka sa bag mo. May pagkain ka sa bag mo. Ikaw naman kumain na. Hindi ko alam kung baon yun o hindi ko alam. Basta may pagkain ka sa bag mo. Huwag na natin pag-usapan masyado yung mga detalye tungkol sa nutritional value ng pagkain sa bag mo. Pero, so sabi ng bata, pahingi ng pagkain. May pagkain ka sa bag mo, okay, parang okay lang naman na ibigay mo. You do not thereby sacrifice something morally significant following Singer's example. So sabihin natin medyo magkahawig na gano'n, ano. So person A, naranasan niya ito, humingi na bata sa harap niya, binigyan niya ng pagkain yung bata. Bakit? What's the motivation? Inisip niya, kasi pagka ginawa ko to, makikita ng mga tao, maraming tao sa paligid ko, baka ma-impress sila. Baka nandiyan yung teacher ko, makita ko ni ma'am, sabihin ni ma'am, uy, mabait pala yung estudyante ko na yun. O makita ko ng kaibigan ko o ng kaklase ko na, nagbigay ng pagkain sa batang nagugutom. Ang bait naman. So, ang motivation is to earn a good reputation. And the result is the child's hunger is addressed. Temporary yun, syempre, pero hindi naman insignificant. Ngayon, nakakain siya kahit paano. Okay, person A, the motivation is to get a good reputation. Person B, kaparehong situation. So yung bata nagugutom, again, nanghingi ng pagkain. Ito namang si person B ay sabihin na nating maawain. Itong tinatalakay ko ngayon, kaugnay ng mga tinalakay ko na sa Module 8. So si person B ay maawain. So nakita niya yung bata, nagugutom, nanghingi ng pagkain, ang sakit sa kalooban, natignan yung, na tignan yung bata, di ba? To look a person in the eye while they're suffering is painful. You can almost feel the pain yourself. So, naawa siya. There's pity. So, the motivation is pity. When we are being motivated by pity, it works something like this. Pity feels painful. There's an internal psychological pain of the person experiencing pity. And you want to get rid of that painful feeling inside yourself. So you get the food inside your bag, you hand it over to the hungry child, and the hungry child may smile or may say thank you or may do nothing, but you will think, I have done something about the hunger of this particular child. So the pity is displaced by another emotion, another feeling, a feel-good emotion that I did something good, right? So here the motivation is to get rid of the pain that comes from pity. That's the second motivation to do the exact same thing. Yung pangatlong tao, person C, nakita niya yung bata ng gutom, nakita niya na, teka muna, ano bang dapat gawin pagka ganito? Nanghihingi siya. Pagkain talaga yung hinihingi niya. Mukhang totoong nagugutom siya. May pagkain naman ako dito. Ay, abot ko na. Kasi yun ang tamang dapat gawin. Yun ang tungkulin ng kahit na sinong taong may isip. At saka may kakayahan tumulong. Okay. So, person A, person B, and person C did the exact same thing in terms of outcome. Actually, pareho yung action eh. Humugot ng pagkain sa bag, nag-abot sa batang nagugutom. According to Kantians, only person C did the right thing. So kung bakit, yung mga fine-grained details nandun sa Module 8, balikan nyo yon. So dito nakikita natin, Kantians measure the moral status of actions differently because they want us to do the right thing, not for the right result. They want us to do the right thing for the right reason. And using examples like the one that I gave just now shows you that you can have a very similar action with very different motives or reasons behind them. And therefore, Kantians will judge those actions differently. Okay, so that's one thing. That's one very important thing to notice about Kantian moral deliberation. Okay, first, that's how it works. Second, it's less demanding compared to consequentialist moral deliberation. Okay, is that the end of the story? Not quite. Okay, so let's go to this next slide. Okay, so this is another point from O'Neill. So she says, but in another sense, Kantian moral deliberation is more ambitious. Okay, bakit? Less demanding but more ambitious. Paano nangyari yun? This has something to do with the vision or the goal. The two theories, consequentialism on the one hand and Kantian deontology on the other, magkaiba sila ng gustong mangyari. Muli, tatalakayan natin to sa pamamagitan ng pagtingin doon sa charity o pagtulong. Okay, bakit ka ba tumutulong? Iba yung sagot ng rule utilitarian, iba yung sagot ng Kantian deontologist sa bakit. Pareho silang tutulong. Sa kanila pareho tungkulin ang tumulong pag may nangangailangan at meron kang kakayahang tumulong. So ang sagot ng Kantian deontologist, it's a moral obligation to give. Ang sagot ng rule utilitarian at ng consequentialist, it's a moral obligation to give. Right? Pero iba yung logic behind it. Iba yung reasoning. Yun yung kailangan natin maintindihan. So how and why is Kantian moral deliberation more ambitious? Again, I will read the quote and then I will explain it. Okay, so O'Neill says, for utilitarians, paternalistic imposition of certain forms of aid and development assistance need not be wrong and may even be required. But for Kantians, who think that beneficence should secure others' possibility for autonomous action, the case for paternalistic imposition of aid or development without recipients' involvement must always be questionable. Okay, paliwanag natin kung ano ibig sabihin yan. Critical dyan yung salitang paternalism. So na slide, papaliwanag ko na mas maraming detalye pa. Pero balikan natin yung tanong ko kanina. Bakit tungkulin ang tumulong sa nangangailangan? ang sagot ng utilitarian, tungkulin na tumulong kasi, yun ang makakalikha ng ligaya, social welfare. Right? So why do we help according to the utilitarian? The point is to remove pain and create happiness and create welfare. Right? So why do we help? We want to help because we want to lessen or remove pain and create happiness. Yun ang sagot ng utilitarian. That is why they say charitable giving is obligatory and we must go for effective altruism. Yung pagtulong na talagang mas nakakarating dun sa nangangailangan. So, a consequence yung consideration doon. Outcome yung consideration. Pero sa Kantian, hindi yun ang sagot nila. Yung Kantian, bakit siya tumutulong? Bakit kailangan niya tumulong? Bakit tungkulin ng tumulong kahit hindi sila interesado sa greatest happiness principle? Okay, ito yung sagot. So, to the question, why should we help the needy when we can? Why is this a moral obligation to help the needy? The Kantian's answer is to remove their vulnerability and or lack of autonomy. So, bakit natin tinutulungan yung nangangailangan? Para magkaroon sila para hindi na sila mawalan ng kakayahang pumili para sa sarili lang. Kasi pagka nagugutom ka, hindi lang na masakit na hindi ka masaya, hindi lang yun Wala kang kayahang pumili para sa sarili mo. May mga bagay na hindi mo kayang piliin kasi nga nagugutom ka. Halimbawa, hindi mo pwedeng piliin na makapag-aral ng mabuti kasi nga walang laman yung tiyan mo. Kaya limitado yung choices mo. So the Kantians want us to help the needy so that they can be self-supporting. Yun ang goal. The goal is to remove vulnerability or lack of autonomy, help them to be autonomous in their own way so that they will no longer need our help and they can help themselves and they can help others. So that's the goal. Pansinin natin, ito yung sinasabi ni O'Neill kung bakit more ambitious yung Kantian moral deliberation. Pwede ka kasing tumulong na nawala yung paghihirap nila, na mas masaya sila, pero hindi pa rin sila malaya kasi nangyari lang sa pagtulong mo, naging dependent sila sa'yo. Kaya hindi katanggap-tanggap yon para sa mga Kantian. Hindi maganda yon para sa kanila. Hindi yun ang best option para sa kanila. And that's why they're very ambitious because they're not going to be satisfied with just removing pain. And if you remove pain and you create happiness by creating dependency, that might satisfy the consequentialist, but it won't satisfy the Kantian. Right? So, Kantians think there is something wrong about producing happiness in a way that creates dependency. So, that's why they're more ambitious. Sa kanila, hindi good enough yun. Na parang, okay, sumayo yung mga tao, pero natuto ba sila na tumayo sa sarili ng paa? Kung ang sagot ay hindi, sabihin sa'yo ng Kantian deontologist, okay, hindi pa rin yan yung pinakamabuting pwede mong gawin. Pwede mo silang tulungan na nawala yung paghihirap nila, naging masaya sila, at pinakamahalaga, nagkaroon sila ng tinatawag ng Kantian na autonomy, yung kakayahang pumili para sa sarili at tumayo sa sariling paa. Yun ang isa sa pinakamagandang pagsasalin siguro sa Filipino nitong autonomy. Okay, so pag-usapan natin yung paternalism kasi kailangan nyo maintindihan yun. Okay, so paternalism, first definition is a very rough characterizations coming from me. So the source of the first bullet point on this slide is me. So I think paternalism, the best way to understand it is to think it refers to inappropriate parenting behavior. It's usually associated with a refusal to allow another to be fully autonomous. Okay? So ang ibig sabihin nitong paternalism, ito ay ang pagturing sa ibang tao na bata, na ikaw ang magulang at sila yung anak, kahit na hindi naman sila bata, kahit na hindi naman sila dapat na may relasyon sa'yo na ganon. So, trying to parent people who are not children. Okay. So, halimbawa, ito yung magiging halimbawa dito sa module natin ngayon. Meron isang tao, hindi siya nangangailangan. So, let's consider a person who is not needy and who is not vulnerable. So, sabihin natin itong taong ito ay may magandang trabaho, kumikita ng maayos, may kakayahang kumita ng sapat para sa kanyang sarili at para sa kanyang pamilya. Sabihin natin may pamilya siya. Okay. So, maayos yun. Wala siyang kapansanan, wala siyang sakit, wala siya ng mga vulnerability na pwede siyang pagsamantalahan ng iba dahil hindi siya makapili dahil nga wala siyang kalayaan dahil kulang yung mga pangangailangan niya. So, hindi siya ganun. So, let's make it a he. He is a working professional earning enough money for himself and his family. Kaya lang, pagka nagkamali siya, pagka pumili siya na sa paraan na sinasabustahin niya ang kanyang sarili, pwede mangyari na 20-30 years from now, wala siyang pension or retirement fund. Pagka halimbawa yung hindi siya nag-ipon at saka hindi maayos yung mga decision niya tungkol sa inipon niya, baka mangyari na pag tumanda siya, wala siyang pera. Magiging na siya, dependent na siya sa ibang tao. Kabilang na yun sa gobyerno ng kung saan man siya nakatira. Okay. So, sabihin ng ibang, so this is obviously not a child. This is a working professional, fully autonomous, not vulnerable. Now, some people might come in like, wait, let's make sure that he doesn't suffer in his old age. So, I'll swoop in and I will make some laws, make some rules so that automatically there's something significant taken from his salary every month, and that amount is effectively invested so that by the time this person retires, he has a pension fund, a big lump sum with interest and so on. Right? Pero ito ay paternalistic. Bakit? Kasi hindi naman siya nangangailangan. Hindi naman siya vulnerable. Hindi naman siya bata. Pero tinrato siya na parang walang kakayahang pumili para sa sarili niya at walang kakayahang magkamali at matuto sa sarili niyang pagkakamali. Yun yung problema, sabi ng Kantian. Hindi yun katanggap-tanggap. Again, that's not acceptable. Right? Because their fundamental value is autonomy. So here's another definition of paternalism. It comes from Dworkin, a philosopher who writes about paternalism. And I got this from the SEP or the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. I will read the parts that's in red. So it says, paternalism is interference of a state or an individual with another person against their will and defended or motivated by a claim that the person interfered with will be better off or protected from harm. Okay. So paternalism here is described as benevolent interference. No? Nililimitahan yung kalayaan ng tao. And this based on what will be for their own good. So what happens, gaya ng nasabi ko kanina, ang problema dito, pagka hindi naman nangangailangan yung taong pinanghimasukan ng ganito, nawawalan siya ng pagkakataon na magdesisyon para sa sarili niya, makita kung ano mangyayari kung mali yung desisyon na yon, at saka matuto dun sa mga pagkakamali na yon. So, autonomy comes with making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. Paternalism interferes with that. So the Kantian's insight is that one of the most important things we can do with our freedom is not to make perfect choices, but to learn and grow from the choices what we make, maybe even especially when we make wrong choices. So paternalism may protect you from wrong decisions you may be making, but it also prevents you from learning what to do when you make less than ideal decisions. right? So the final definition of paternalism that I will discuss in this recording comes from Simon Blackburn's Oxford Dictionary of Philosophy, and here we see more clearly, perhaps, what the issue is. So part of the definition in Blackburn's dictionary says paternalist forms of patronage, so gift-giving, charitable involvement, provision of amenities and institutions. Paternalist forms of patronage has frequently had the function of disguising naked relationships of domination. For example, between capitalists and their workers, husbands and wives, or colonialists and colonized. So, ang nangyayari dito, paternalism is a move that makes a certain individual or group, sometimes it's a government, retain power over people or to control them and manipulate them. Paternalism is actually a form of manipulation. Ito yung minsan tinatawag yung ibang mga gobyerno sa ibang bahagi ng mundo na nanny state or nanny government, kasi parang ginagawa ang tungkulin nung gobyerno na yon na itrato bilang mga bata yung kanilang mga mamamayan. Pero yung kanilang mga mamamayan, hindi naman bata. The citizenry should not be babied because they're not babies. They're adults. Most of them are working with social safety nets. They can continue working for the most part. They can make decisions for themselves. So the role of the government and the role of bigger organizations should not be to prevent them from making their own decisions. Minsan ito yung hindi natin nakikita, yung mga Pilipino, minsan tinatrato yung mga leader, minsan nga kandidato pa lang ang tingin na tatay o kaya nanay. Parang bakit tayo naghahanap ng tatay o kaya nanay? Hindi naman tayo mga bata, di ba? Kung botante ka, nasa edad ka na, baka malamang may trabaho ka na, ilang beses, ilang eleksyon ka na nakaboto, may kakayahan ka na magdesisyon para sa sarili mo, para sa pamilya mo, para sa lipunan na kinabibilangan mo. Kaya hindi dapat na maghanap nitong parang tatayong magulang kung hindi ka naman minor de edad o bata. So ito yung punto ng mga Kantian, that we should take hold of our autonomy and our independence and our ability to choose. And like I said previously, one of the most important things we can do with our freedom is not to make perfect choices, but to learn and grow from the choices we make. And this opportunity to learn and grow from the choices we make is not something that should be removed from us by our teachers, by our parents, or by our government. Okay, so that's it for this recording.